Elizabeth, firstly, thank you for joining us on the Housing Collective podcast. For the listeners, could you give us a brief introduction to yourself and your organisation?
My name's Elizabeth Froude. I'm the Group Chief Executive for Platform Housing Group. We are a large social landlord, coast to coast through the Midlands, Wales to the Wash. We have 50,000 homes, or just under 50,000, and we build between 1,500 and 2,000 new homes every year. So our development programme is very much focused on affordable tenures, which is why we managed to keep them on our balance sheet every year.
Can you share with us, on a personal note, Elizabeth, a bit about your career and your journey to becoming CEO of Platform?
I think if I look back to when I was like 23 or something like that, and people said to me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I always used to say, "I don't want to be the finance director. I want to be the managing director." So it's kind of the same role. It was always where I wanted to go. I spent 20 years working in really well-known FTSE names, people like Technicolor, Diageo, things like that. And I came in always in change and merger type of roles. And I came into housing on a 13-week contract to work on a merger to form what was Radian Group, which was a three-way merger, and I think still the only three-way merger in the sector. And I ended up being there for six years. So I just got brought in to work on other change things, work with the finance department, work with the repairs departments. I really got a great understanding of housing. So I think whilst I was there, I was really lucky. There was a lot of really great people who shared the history of housing with me. And it just felt like the place I'd always wanted to work.
You and I have spoken about this offline, Elizabeth, but we often find with leaders when they're going through their careers, the reason for them moving to another organisation is usually for a promotion. Looking at your career, we spoke about before, is that you've made quite a number of sideways steps in your career to get to where you are today. So can you talk to us a bit more about what those moves were, why you made those moves, and also, arguably more importantly, what did you learn from making those moves?
Yeah, so, I came into housing with Radian, working and absorbing all the different functions as I went through. I then went to Genesis Housing, which when I joined them, were in a little bit of a muddle. Up until recently, they still had the record impairments for their assets because they had a massive land bank when we hit the last recession. And learned a huge amount from them. They had a massive change program going on with 28 projects, which was the reason I joined. And what happened is we really put the whole world to rights inside Platform and did a fabulous job of making it a good organisation quite quickly. We then nearly went into a merger with Thames Valley. And at the very last minute, the board decided that they didn't think the merger was the right one for them. So I spent a little bit of time doing demerger work. And so we sort of slightly reshaped the business through that, which for me was a great opportunity because coming into Genesis, I'd come in with a narrower role than probably I'd had for a long time. And as time evolved over the next couple of years, I gathered more and more functions inside and disciplines inside Genesis until really, apart from development and HR and comms, which worked for the chief exec, I was responsible for all the other areas of the business. And I think that gave me the great opportunity to just triangulate that thing about the trade-offs and the how do you manage all these different disciplines and how do you build a good management team to manage all of those disciplines as well. And over time, we had a really strong leadership team at Genesis. And of course, we then went into the merger with Notting Hill, and Notting Hill Genesis was a merger that was always destined to happen. They were twins. They were born on opposite sides of a road in Notting Hill, did all the same things over the next 30, 40, 50 years. So, when they merged, it was probably one of those, it had to always happen. And after about a year, I left, which I think was a good thing for the organisation. I think it helped to give it that singularity. I think whilst I was there, it still encouraged the Notting Hill and Genesis thing. And as I left there, really I'd always been scanning for the right chief exec's role. And as I was leaving, Notting Hill Platform came up. And like a lot of people at that time, I didn't really know who Platform were. They were born out of a merger between Fortis and Waterloo and East and West Midlands organisations. And when I looked at it, it just seemed, it was like kismet that it was the organisation that had so much potential. I was in at the beginning of what could be a big transformation and change for it. So joined them in July 2020, now 3.5 years, and it's gone in a flash, but we've really moved the organisation forward, do a lot of really good things and really built on the strengths of the legacy organisation.
It's really interesting and fascinating background as well, Elizabeth, you've got, particularly from not only mergers, but also demergers as well, as you say there with MTVH. So, and I'm really intrigued about something that you said just kind of earlier, where you've said, I didn't want to be the FD, I wanted to be the MD. And as you say, you see a lot of people going up kind of the finance route or the assets route, the customer route, and not really branching out to get a broader understanding. So for those senior leaders who are at that point of their career where they could make that sideways move, what advice would you give to them, and what's benefited you from making those moves?
Yeah, I think the thing that makes my CV really strong is the variety. And I think someone once, one of our suppliers, one of their senior managers had just got a new promotion, and she said to me, does your job ever scare you that you've taken on things that you don't know about? I said, no, I think your job should always slightly terrify you. I said, because it means you're learning something from it. And so I always say to people that you should be prepared to take on things that you think you don't know about, because you can learn really new angles to the way you think from trying new things. And I think, the more senior you become, the less technically focused you need to be, and the more it's about people management and bringing the teams together, keeping the focus on the end goal for everyone. And actually, just for me, what it's taught me over the years, I'm quite an analytical brain, which is why everyone kept telling me I should be an accountant. It helps me to unpack quickly when I go into an organisation, what makes it work, what are the important things, and what are the things that actually are holding it back and don't work. So we actually keep the right focus.
Yeah, no, I think that's fascinating advice, and I think it's true that, like I say, it should terrify you, because, like I say, it'll also stretch you and make you think differently about kind of the way of the world. And you also, Elizabeth, you mentioned a second ago that you spent 20 years of your career in the commercial sector with some quite significant FTSE businesses. So coming into the sector, what were your biggest takeaways from that part of your career that you brought it across into housing?
Yeah, I had quite a few years working for Kingfisher Retail, and I think retail was a great place to work, actually, because we think we've invented value for money in housing, but actually in retail, value for money is very real every day. The first thing they do when they plan a range is they work out the amount of money they're making for every linear foot of shelving in a store, and they scientifically put the right products in the right place to make the most money. So I think, if you like, value return, really learned a lot from that. Some really tough managers, actually, in the commercial sector. It's very hard-nosed at times. And I had a director that I worked for who said to me once upon a time, you're all masters of your own destiny. It was his way of saying, you can decide if you're good at this or not. And I just thought at that time, well, that's just a load of rubbish. What is he talking about? But actually, now that I'm older and wiser, I see that he was right, actually, is that, you can kind of, if you know where you want to go, it's in your power to work to achieve it, to figure out what the route looks like. I don't think that means you have to do it all single-handedly. I think, using people for insight, for mentors, for getting coaches, things like that, just helps you to question yourself, and make sure you understand what your motives are for doing things.
You talk about master of your own destiny there, which clearly rings true right now. I mean, but also, I think, and this is from a search perspective as well, Elizabeth, I think we can all undervalue and kind of overlook the amount of preparation it takes for someone to go forward for an interview for their next leadership role, for instance. So looking at some of those career moves you've made and clearly the preparation you've done for those interviews, is there any advice you'd give to a leader preparing for their next interview?
I look through the role profiles and the organisation, and I sit and I think, what would be the toughest interview questions they could ask me, and I write them out, and I write I write out what my answers will be. So I think, well, if they go into those dark corners, I already have the bones of this conversation, and I really learned this. There was a guy called James Campion. He knew me very well, and he interviewed me for a role. And it was a kind of pre-interview. And after that, he said to me, you didn't talk about X, Y, Z. And he said, you didn't answer this. He said, and I know, because I know you, that's all there. And that made me realize a long, long time ago, that actually, if you don't kind of think it through before you go in, you miss the things that you really should be telling people that make you more valuable. I think the other thing I would say about interviews is, if you can't persuade yourself that you really are the right person for that role, you'll never persuade anyone else either. So you've got to have it in there that you know why you fit that role.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's fascinating advice, Elizabeth, because like you say, we often see candidates really arguably over preparing for the research for that particular organisation, but actually looking inside and having that confidence of going, you know what, I am the right person for this next director, executive or chief executive role. It's vital, and having that confidence to go, I can do this role. I think that's invaluable advice.
Yeah, I think I'd also say don't overthink it as well, because the one interview I got really wrong. I had analysed the companies that I was going to death because I really wanted the job, and actually they didn't need me to know all that about the organisation. Actually, what they needed me to know was about me.
Yeah, and as you say, it's something that's arguably quite simple, but is so often overlooked. And actually, but also, I think although it's overlooked, I think it's also a really difficult task. So if you haven't moved from an organisation in, say, 5 years, looking back of going some of the achievements that you've made in 5 years, there will be a lot. But if you haven't had that constant reflection, it's sometimes hard to bring that out into a conversation or even a CV. So yeah, really interesting, brilliant. And if we take it forward to today, and obviously that journey that you've been with Platform, as you mentioned there a second ago, it was a relatively newly formed organisation between Waterloo, Fortis Living. There's probably correct me if I'm wrong, 2 separate systems, 2 separate cultures. There's 2 regions, which will have its own complexities from East and West Midlands. Can you talk us a bit more about that journey of how you've kind of unpicked that merger during the last kind of 3-4 years while you've been there?
Yeah, so when I arrived at Platform, they were literally 2 organisations in parallel inside the skin of Platform, and nothing had really been bridged or created to make them Platform. The first thing I did is kind of ask the IT team to get us all into the same technology, the same platform, email addresses, website, as quickly as possible. And they said to me they could do it by Christmas. So I said to them, go for it. And they did a fabulous job. And they got there at the beginning of December. And so we then were able to say to everyone, you now plan to work anywhere in the geography of Platform. So you weren't, constrained to working in the geography of Fortis or Waterloo. Got everyone to start working in different offices. The most valuable thing is we started working on the values of the new organisation, and we asked our residents and our customers eventually if we thought it was right. What was the values of the organisation they thought they wanted to be part of? And we actually got 70% of our staff contributed to it. So we were able to package it up in language that felt familiar to them. So when we were going forward, we'd say, well, this is the values of Platform. You contributed to it. It's your words. And again, is something to hang around what does it look like to be a Platform person? What do they sound like? How do they respond to people? How do they work as a team? I don't underestimate or want to devalue how hard shifting a lot of people in a wide geography and a disparate organisation. We had some great people. We've got people who've been with the organisation through the last 5 mergers. They've been there for decades and decades. And we had to figure out how we got the best value out of those people too. I guess the key thing I did is I got the ops team very quickly to start working on a new operating model, because two medium-sized organizations becoming one large organization, none of our historic infrastructure or ways of working were fit for purpose. And I said to them, whatever they did, I wanted us to have what I called super patches. We've got to have 3. We can't have 2, because 2 will become a proxy for Fortis and Waterloo. So we now have 3 localities, and they worked to what I call the core centre stuff that is done as a corporate activity, which allows us to leverage the efficiencies of technology or on a centralized function. And then it allows us to edit the way we work with the customers on the ground inside those localities. Because if you look at a locality which includes places like Birmingham and Leicester, they're very urban and lots of properties in tower block. You go to Lincolnshire, you've got the same number of houses over hundreds and hundreds of miles. So, it's a very different customer proposition, a very different property and maintenance and service delivery approach. So we've got 3 different localities, and that meant the rest of the business shaped itself behind the operational stuff. So we started, everything we've done so far is customer first, and our strategy in our systems design, and our customers have worked with us to help make that happen.
What does customer first mean to you and platform?
I think when we redesign things, we ask ourselves what does it mean for the customer, and we also kept echoing the fact that customer is internal to the business as well. So, the flow through the business of service delivery of information ending up with the end customer is only good if all the internal customers get the information and support they need as well. So, one of our, 2 of our values, one is about owning it. So we say what we're going to do, and we do what we said we'll do. The other one is about one team. So it's about, we've kind of been very iterative about we are one team. People just see us as platform if we either succeed together or fail together. And I think what's happened as the values have become more live is that people will challenge and call out a little more that people who aren't on the same journey. And I personally, I'm quite visible. I'm in the business, I'm out and about, and if things come to me that feel wrong, I will go to the source to find out why it's wrong. I'll challenge people for, I've got an email from a customer who says they've been trying to get you to respond to them and you haven't, or a complaint that just feels like something that just shouldn't have happened, to make sure we don't do it again. And the other thing we did is we moved what we call our customer experience team into the center, into a corporate resource. So they manage the flow of complaints, but they've also got a layer, which means we have business partners that take the learnings from complaints back to all business areas and allow us to make changes and learn, so we don't keep making the same old mistakes.
Yeah, which is like I say, it can be quite a vicious loop if you're not kind of nipping that area in the bud. I mean, you've mentioned that you've done quite a lot, Elizabeth, in that time. You've also got the backdrop of you joined with it a pandemic. You also had there's also building safety. There's also damp and mold, consumer regulations on the horizon as well. So you've done quite a lot against quite a challenging backdrop. So what have you learned during that period of time? And also, can you talk to us about some of the challenges that you've obviously faced during that time of doing such a huge amount of transformation?
Yeah, I think it's been a hard journey because COVID, I think platform were spectacular in COVID. I think the whole sector was good, but I think with the platform, we quickly got people who thought they couldn't work at home to realize they could work at home. We maintained the focus on what we wanted to do for our journey, for our new strategy. We did a lot of systems building and testing in a virtual space. So we didn't slow down in terms of the progress we wanted to make. And we were brave enough where we thought we'd got it a bit wrong to say, let's stop and review rather than just keep building more on top of an imperfect solution. I think we did we started doing a lot of coffee mornings online, things to get people involved that were at home. So it wasn't just all about work. We did, instead of having a corporate away day for the once a year event, we, as an executive team, all piled into a warehouse in Milton Keynes and broadcast it. Did it remotely, which was just an interesting exercise. Probably the first time some of them had all met one another as well, because I recruited the exec team and the board in Teams in the middle of COVID. So the first time they got to meet one another, so we were doing this broadcast out to the staff about where we're at and where we're going to go. And I think we've maintained that kind of very strong, very open communication. I started a thing called the Ideas Lab, which is built inside Teams. It's a channel that allows all of my colleagues across the business, when they see something that just doesn't make sense. I wanted to take the why do I do it stuff out of the business, so we allow them to put stuff into the Ideas Lab. All the feeds are given an owner, and the owner will go back to that person and say, here's what we've done as a result of your feedback, or actually we can't do it right now, but we'll build it into the transformation program, or actually here's why we can't do it. It just doesn't make sense for the business. So it's about, I think, maintaining the pressure on and the visibility of the strategy and what we were going to do. It's about not forgetting the people stuff, though. I think you've got to bring everybody with you. And actually, it was great once we were out of lockdown, because it meant we could start picking up person-to-person conversations off the back of that quite quickly. So as a business, we all go everywhere, including the exec team. I don't have a single office in a building anywhere. So I float between home and anywhere in the Midlands. So, I think that helps to just reflect the management style we want of the rest of the organisation.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a very forward-thinking approach as well, Elizabeth. And I absolutely love the Ideas Hub, because I don't think it's something that is so accessible to any organisation. But I think, as I said, you're giving a platform for every colleague to have their say in how platform moves forward, and I think that's invaluable, really, from a cultural perspective. Yeah,
and they certainly got a lot of feedback too. And even now, it's probably 2.5, 3 years old now, and we still get regular feedback when people find stuff that doesn't make sense.
It's brilliant, really good. And you look back at those three years, as we spoke about, Elizabeth, 4 years. I mean, what are you most proud of when you look back at that time?
I think I'm most proud of the fact that we've managed to maintain such good traction. I think people have remained absolutely focused on what we want to do to make ourselves better. I think we've built some fabulous pieces of technology. I mean, my opening gambit to the IT team was, I don't want people to say to me, you can't have that information until we get the new system in. I said, if we've got the information in some place in a dark corner, let's start building dashboards and giving everybody the tools to see the improvement and to see what's happening and see what they've got to improve. And we've now got hundreds of dashboards, a very huge proportion of which are live and dynamic. And so I think the way we've managed to give ourselves some quite leading edge technology in a space that's been 50% virtual and 50% live, and that we've managed to deliver a very big chunk of our corporate strategy that we wrote in 2021. And I think as an organisation, we've just lived our values, actually.
Yeah, no, I think it's brilliant. And particularly, as I say there, as actually the question earlier, it's you've done so much transformation against such a challenging backdrop. So I think it's brilliant, that transformation, and no doubt platform will go on stronger and stronger, really, which is great to see. And you talk, and I've got to ask you this question, Elizabeth, because I think your experience is invaluable in this area is M&A. Clearly, it's still incredibly prevalent in the sector. You've been through ones through Radian, like I say, the only three-way merger. You've gone through kind of Notting Hill and Genesis. You've also been through the how to unpack a merger that doesn't happen with MTVH and Genesis, and then obviously kind of really getting under the skin of the merger of platforms. So do you have any advice for chief executives that are either going through that journey at the moment or having conversations regarding potential M&A activity?
Probably 2 or 3 really key things is have a really clear blueprint at the start that you can hang on to, something that people can really remember when they're halfway through it, what it was we said we wanted to do at the start. I think make sure that it's properly resourced and financed. Don't give it proper structure. Don't expect people to do their day job. Fly the plane and rewires at the same time is slower and a little more dangerous. But I think also be brave enough to say, actually, it's not going to work doing it this way. Actually, let's all pause now that we're in the new organization and say what would be better. And if it, takes a little bit of time or a little bit of money, actually in the long run, it'll be the better product. And often it includes lots of people who are now in jobs that weren't when you designed the original blueprint as well.
Yeah, really interesting. Thank you. And then we talk about another strategic agenda, something that you've touched on earlier around agile working. And I find this topic so fascinating because I don't think there is a one size fits all by any stretch of the imagination. So coming out of the pandemic, you really embedded an agile working strategy and continue to thrive in this area. So can you talk to us a bit more about that journey and what's worked for you so far, and also probably those areas that haven't worked so well?
Yeah, I think when we were in lockdown, we revisited and actually wrote a new corporate strategies for 21-26. And a very strong theme that came out of it when we were working was about choice. So that was about our customers having a choice about the channels and the ways they wanted to interact with us, but to make that work also to give our staff and our colleagues choice about where they worked and how they worked. And eventually that will give us more flexibility around time and how and where and when we're able to deliver services. So we've stuck with that word choice being the mantra. Nobody at Platform has to come into the office. We actually asked all of our colleagues at the end of COVID how they wanted to work going forward. And with the exception of 150 people who said, I'd like a desk, nobody else wanted to be office-based. So we took that as a good, strong guide. We made everybody except those people home-based. We say to people, there are 2 big offices, one in Worcester and one in Birmingham Business Park. They are there. If you want to come into the office for the day, feel free. If you're having a team meeting, try and have it as a team meeting and come face to face now and then, because we are a pack animal, and it's nice for us to just chat. But also you can just join meetings on Teams and probably be more productive. Actually, I don't think we could have done as much work as we've done without having people not traveling as much, and that's become productive work time. I think a lot of people are mandating specific days in the week. We said to teams, this is the background rules. If your team think it doesn't work for your team, then as a team make up your own rules, if you like. So our contact center have a routine where every week, 1 day a week, some of them come into the office on a kind of rolling basis, so that the whole team has been in the office once a week, and they'll come in on a different day next week. And that's been really useful for new starters, because that's contact centers a big number, a big pool. A lot of people come into the business through the contact center, and it also gives them that opportunity to learn quicker by just turning to the person next to them and saying, how do I get this? Where do I find that? At other teams, the finance team, for example, who we had to unchain from their desks when we wanted them to go home, now really kind of don't want to come into the office unless they really have to. So I think it's been a really interesting experience. The most successful thing out off the back of it is our ability to attract some really good talent into the business that are working in far-flung places that we wouldn't have been able to recruit them if we'd been sticking to, you've got to be near Birmingham or Worcester. And that includes technical skills, analysts, finance skills, and even our data scientist who lives a long way from anywhere we work. But they're very, very powerful skills that are useful for the business.
In a way, it's going back to that initial part of that strategy that you said, customer first. What is the most important thing for the customer? Is that we get a really good data scientist in there. It doesn't matter where they live, they can operate kind of in whatever region they are, on the condition that they're putting the customer first, and it is improving a customer's life during that tenancy.
Well,
I think,
and it helps to reduce the carbon footprint of the organisation as well.
of course,
Because I was talking to someone the other day that I work as a mentor for, and he was saying that his partner, she's a data analyst for an American company, and her clients are in America, and her team are in the Far East, and she never sees them. And they make her go into the office in London 5 days a week. So
sensible.
where she sits, she doesn't see anybody. She sits in an office online all day, and that's just mad.
And also, I think from a cultural perspective, and I've no doubt you probably experienced this as well, Elizabeth, where you'll go into an office, it's empty, particularly coming out of COVID. You get that if it's not been planned properly, you go into an office, it's quiet. It's quite a kind of demoralising day for you, because you think you've just been stuck in traffic, or you've been on a train for an hour and a half. The amount of work that you could have done during that time, it's just not productive at all.
This year certainly feels busier. I think it's more, everybody's out and about more this year. And the office, we're actually at the point where we've got, someday we go in and the car park is full, which is kind of a nice sensation, because all those people have gone there because they want to be there, because they've brought their team together. But so it's not that they're having to go there. I think that's the important thing.
Yeah, and I think it's also that, because I was going to ask you this question in regards to L&D. So naturally, people learn by osmosis, don't they? Particularly what you said there about the contact center. But it's, how do you get that middle manager, high achieving middle manager, through all the L&D that they need to become your next director if they are working in an agile state? So how are you ensuring that all staff are going through that L&D structure to make sure that they're creating those future leaders, but from an agile working perspective?
So we did two things really. We did a program called Bring Your Best, which was giving people the tools to deal with difficult jobs, customers, internal, external. And it gave them a toolkit around how there's kind of what's good language, what's bad language. How do you get yourself personally out of a day that's difficult, or a call that's difficult with someone? And then we went on the next year, and everybody did that, every single person, just because it helped us to fine tune how we respond and react to service requests. The next thing we did is the top 3 tiers of the business have done a program called Leading for Results that we've been running all of this year, and all of the potential leaders, so the senior leadership team and all the heads of service beneath them have all started doing this, and there'll be another part of the program next year, and that's giving them a kind of really detailed skill set and base to understand performance management, growing teams, coaching teams, and how to work with people in different environments as well, because we don't want to become passive managers. And in fact, to be good in this environment, you almost have to be more proactive. And so we're trying to give them, if you like, a checklist, a skill set that enables them to do that. And it also gives our future leaders a clear sign that we want them to stay with us. So we want them to grow, and we want them to understand that they can put their hand up and ask for opportunities and support to achieve that. And it's been really great to see how, actually even more so than the exec and the senior leadership team, it's been great to see how the next level down have really embraced this in a big way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's fascinating, particularly given you talk about across the sector, and we know this, Elizabeth, that there is a challenge in regards to directorate silos where people kind of stay in their own lane and they don't collaborate as much. But having that kind of future leadership, aspect where they are having to think horizon scanning here about how does that impact different directorates to create their own leadership journey. I think that's really, really important.
When we did that, we did bring them together.
Yeah.
So that they actually build those bridges across the directorates as well.
Yeah, and particularly, like I say, there's that element of agile, and then face to face for those type of meetings, which is great. And I think that not only makes sure that your vision of values is still coming through, but you're also driving a culture of togetherness almost, kind of to particularly given some of the challenges that we've just discussed. I think it's really important.
Well, we kind of keep reminding people about the one team value.
Yeah.
And that's important. Yeah.
Without a shadow of doubt. And it means so much as well. I mean, and we talk about agile working and that naturally you would have had to have probably quite a few debates and conversations at board. So how did you get that backing from board at that time where you were really driving through kind of coming out of the pandemic? And what advice would you give to leaders who are still realistically wrestling with that agile working debate?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a seesaw, really. So, we wrote the strategy. We embedded that it was going to be about choice, so we're going to let people do it. There is a generational thing. So your board are usually more mature, predominantly male. Our board is actually 50-50. And we've been lucky enough in our recruitment to bring in different sectors, different age groups, so a bit more diversity. But I think the board periodically will do would it be better, or should we make people come in? Would that make it better? Would that solve the problem? Or we have to show them why it wouldn't make the difference. I think what we have to keep echoing is that the millennials and the younger cohort want that choice. I think there's definitely been a sea change in people's approach to what is work about, especially off the back of COVID. And I think for the younger employee, work is not the be all and end all of everything. Whereas the more mature members of the staff, we kind of always looked at work as we have to do everything 110%, and then life is almost secondary. And I think that's turned around. The whole work-life balance thing is different. And we have to keep demonstrating to the board the successes we've had in recruitment of skills, in customer and staff engagement. So we do a lot of work to temperature check well-being. We have well-being Wednesdays, where the well-being team remind us about things we can do to make ourselves stay healthier, improve our mental wellness, stay connected to the business. And we also have a new engagement surveying system, which is on an app and is much easier to respond to. And we ask not only the kind of engagement and corporate questions, but the whole what does it feel like for you stuff as well.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting, particularly that well-being side. I can always recall the interview that we did with Bjorn Howard of Asta, and he said, if someone wants to kind of go out and get some fresh air at 10:30 on a Tuesday morning and walk around the village and then come back, that's fine because it's their well-being, and actually they'll probably be more productive kind of in the afternoon if they're doing that. But there seems to be kind of sometimes, as you say, particularly with generational side, is that you can't do that. You can't be walking around at 10 o'clock. We've got meetings to do, and it's just trying to make sure that, as you say, they're reflecting back on that staff engagement. So important.
I think we are clear though. We are clear though to people that the business has to work first. So I'm not saying to people you couldn't go for that walk, but what we're saying is, if you've made a commitment to do something, to deliver something to a meeting, it has to happen. But we also say, if you've got a personal commitment, just put it in your diary that you've got a personal commitment.
Yeah. And
then people won't go, oh, we can get hold of them. It's all very sneaky, because it's not. It's in their diary that they've got private time. Yeah. And so we know it's there. It's a very grown up relationship.
Yeah, it's grown up and respectful at the end of the day, isn't it? So it's which I think it's the way forward, and has to be, to continue the agile working methodology. Yeah. And just talking about boards as well, Elizabeth, it's well documented that some housing associations and commercial businesses are moving away from hybrid and bringing staff into kind of 4 days a week and work from home on a Friday, that old school mentality of kind of what people used to think hybrid working was, which it does make me smile at times. I mean, you look at that, clearly boards will see that in the press or speaking to some of their peers. So how do you cut out that external noise and maintain focus on your stance towards agile working?
I think it's about keeping a focus on the successes that we've delivered. And our board, actually, we keep them quite close. I know a lot of people keep their boards at arm's length. I went right out of the blocks. I asked that our board should live inside the same Teams environment that we do as an organisation, so they have access to a lot of dashboards and an awful lot of information, which means that they, they can check in their own time about things that they are thinking about, and they have their own channels within which they can chat and talk if they've got concerns. And it also means they can very easily and quickly find the executive team. And we also buddied up the exec with a board member, so they've got a kind of go-to person for quick answers or concerns. And we try to keep the relationship very, very open and very transparent with them, so that they don't feel they don't know. And that includes bad news. So if something's not right, we make sure that the board know, and we contextualize it for them. And I think if we do that, they feel like they know what's going on in the business, they are less inclined to feel that they need to start being command and control with things.
And I was just going to follow up with that, Elizabeth, in regards to you seeing across the sector, chief execs are talking to us around the issues that they're currently having with board because of the challenging backdrop. Board are starting to become more operational than strategic and keeping it quite high level from their board meetings. Do you feel that some of those things that you've done with buddies, with board members, have helped that your board stay strategic instead of dropping down into those operational questions?
Yeah, we, like everybody, we have those balanced scorecards that have a nice number of KPIs, and they grow and they grow and they grow. We've done, I think, a couple of years in a row now where we've done a bit of a team building day with the board and the executive team in the room together. And we did one earlier this year where we sort of just said to the board, you keep asking for saying the board papers are too long, but you keep asking for stuff. And we just brought it all to the table, and we did a workshop to say, well, here are all the KPIs. What ones do we really think are needed by the board, and which ones do we think are operational? And we took it back down to, I think, 12 KPIs from 48. And so we also had the opportunity to say to the board and to hear from the board what works for me and what doesn't work for me, and to make a bit of a kind of pact to address those issues. And I think that certainly helps, because it's natural when things are difficult and they are anxious about something that they will want to get involved in it. So it's about making sure you've got the visibility of the right things, that they can be assured you're seeing it and you're answering the same questions that they're asking.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And I think it's fair to say, Elizabeth, given some of the things that we've explored today, it's quite an exciting time for Platform, particularly kind of if we look forward. So as we move into this next financial year, what are Platform's strategic priorities for 24-25?
Yeah, I think this is possibly one of the most difficult times the housing sector's ever had to deal with, because we've got bucket loads of legislation and regulation that are all around us. We've got a difficult macroeconomic environment, spiraling costs and income constraints, because we've got a very exposed client group. So I think probably like a lot of organisations, we're focusing on just maintaining the strength of the organisation so that we can get through this, making sure we're hardwired more and more into what our customers need, and making sure we're able to support them. So we have a wellbeing fund, which is £2 million. So it's about making sure that's visible and accessible easily for often very basic things. For, I would say, a growing number of our residents. So when we started 3 years ago, I would have said it was probably addressing the needs of the poorest 10% of our clients. Now you start to see that group we always called the squeezed middle, those on low income jobs who are just trying to get by and just need a little bit of help. And actually maintaining the financial capacity to invest in our existing homes and continue with our decarbonisation plans and continue to work on what we need to do to get to net zero. Seem to keep, like everyone, keep recruiting more and more surveyors every year. So it's all about asset management now. That's the thing. It's about the existing properties. But also, I think where platform is a little unique is that we are maintaining a strong development program. So we have quite a big pipeline of properties. We are currently buying land out for homes in 25, 26. I have a big development team. We're not being, but we're being quite prudent about what we're buying. We're not. What a lot of people do in this environment when it's tough is they start kind of breaking up the rules and saying, "Oh, we'll edit this one and we'll edit that one." We're not doing that. So the team are working hard to make schemes work. And where we've got extra money out of a scheme, we use it to improve the energy performance of the scheme, so we don't have a future retrofit pipeline as well. And of course, the most important thing, looking after our people, because if we look after them, they'll look after our customers.
Completely. Brilliant. Thank you, Elizabeth. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I mean, before I let you go, we do have a bit of a quick fire questions around leadership. And so firstly, what has been your most valuable leadership lesson you've learned?
It's a very basic one. We've put two of those and one of those, haven't we, for a reason. So actually, you use them, listen, because it actually stops you making mistakes. So listen to everyone and then decide if you're right or wrong.
Yeah, brilliant. What advice would you give to an aspiring leader starting out on their journey?
Yeah, I think don't be too locked down about what you think you want to do. If something's kind of interesting but new, be brave enough to try it. Because the old thing you do is always going to be there. I started as an accountant and realized quickly I didn't want to be an accountant because it wasn't enough. You weren't in the business and with the customers enough. So that was always the direction of travel.
And what do you believe to be the key leadership traits required in today's world?
Yeah, I think, I hate individual words because sometimes they become a bit cliche, but I think authenticity, be yourself. You don't have to be in a certain corporate mold. So I think, being authentic and approachable. And I think especially in the current environment, resilience, is the one thing that will get us all through. And we have to be resilient for the whole organisation.
Yeah, don't disagree with that at all. And finally, one leadership book you'd recommend to the listeners.
off the back, so it was funny when off the back of our Leading for Results course, the lady who runs it from our L&D team gave everybody a copy of the book. She said, knowing you, I know you'd like a copy of it. So here you go. The 5 dysfunctions of a team. And when you read it, you'll see people who are in your organization. Yeah. And it's a good thing. I always say, if you don't want to keep learning, it's time to just go home and go to bed. So I come to work always wanting to learn something new. So
that is brilliant. Thank you so much. Elizabeth, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, as I say. So thank you for joining us on the Housing Collective podcast, and I'll see you soon.